announce it. And let me check if we are live. And so let me check if everything is working correctly. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. I'm just testing the. There is no frame drops. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Seems it's good. Okay, perfect. 2, 3. I'm just. Should I link you over, by the way, my Twitch channel, or you have it?
Oh, yes, I have it.
Oh, okay, perfect.
More on it.
Perfect. Okay, let me sit into my original position here. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if we can start. Let us know if everything is working properly, correctly, perfectly. Let us know. Let us know. I will check it also myself because who knows when people will write. So let's rather not wait. People will write. So okay, it seems everything is working perfectly. Okay, cool. Let me know. Let me know if we can start. Let me know if you're down to start. Let me know. Are you down to start, Paul? Let me know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We can go anytime you want.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone in my very new episode of my Dev Live show today. I'm joined with Paul Green, who is the creator of the game called Venture to the Wild and also worked on a lot of AAA games and also smaller games as well. And I'm very thankful and very honored that you joined us for today's episode. Like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Hi, as you said, I'm Paul Green. Thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure. I've worked in video games for about 20 years.
Okay.
I started out doing computer science at university. And then after that, I worked at Rockstar North for about 10 years, starting out as QC on Vice City and then making my way up to designer for GTA 4. After that, I left and I went to Ubisoft Montreal for Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood. And then I worked in Boston for a couple of years on BioShock Infinite. And after shipping that, back to Ubisoft for about another 10 years on more Assassin's Creeds and Far Cry's. And then me and a bunch of friends, we decided to set up our own studio. And so we founded Cut to Bits, where we just put out the game Venture to the Vile.
I see. Thank you for that. So my very first question would be, what was your very first contact with video games as a player, if you remember those times of your past?
Oh, the earliest memory would probably be playing on the Atari 2600.
Okay.
Like things like Pitfall and I always forget the name, but the one where there's a little tank thing that you jump over holes and you can shoot up and forwards, and they're very simple days, but that was like the start. I always found there's something magical there. But as I grew older, when I was a teenager in the 90s, I mean, it was all about the 16 bits moving into 32-bit console. And it wasn't really about any particular platform that was the most dominating one. It was just try to get as many friends with as many different consoles we could play as much as possible. But I think one of my earliest moments of realizing that games could be something that I would be interested in doing, because up to that point, I always thought they were made by wizards or some kind of magical creation. There was no way that people could make such wonder. Was probably the original Half-Life. When that game came out, I think we're all kids and we're all completely in shock about wow, you know, this medium can be so much more. And that was one of my first kind of light bulb moments. But I've been playing games since a little boy all my life, and to be honest, I pretty much love everything I can get my hands on.
I see. I can relate to that, by the way. I can relate to it so much. Yeah. So what was the very first moment when like you made the first step in order to make games, if you remember that moment in your life?
Yeah, we were doing our final year at university. It was our dissertation year, and a couple of friends, we always like to do some homebrew stuff, working on the Game Boy Advance with some flash cartridges, making silly little demos, and just playing around in DirectX and seeing what we could come up with. And one of my roommates, he gave me a heads up saying, there's some QC positions available for this game called Grand Theft Auto, and we think it's going to be big. 3 just came out and it was getting rave reviews, and they're ramping up for Vice City, and it was night shift, so it was a bit tricky. So in the daytime I'll be at university, and at the nighttime I'll be working at Rockstar.
Okay.
And on the weekends I'll be sleeping tremendous amounts. But that was my first step really into the video games. I was very, very lucky.
I see. So more personal question from me would be, how do you feel about your family, parents, and close friends? Were they supportive about your decision that you made the first step in order to work on video games and in the video game industry?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My mum has always been quite a big cheerleader for that.
I see.
And she kind of got a bit of a kick from all the controversy about GTA when it came out.
I see.
Because back in those days, we were one of the first to be labeled as like the video game nasties, and we had a lot of crazy lawyers coming after us, and newspapers were not very flattering and trying to paint us all as sociopathic villains that are corrupting children. And
true.
It was it was quite an odd time in life, to be honest. It was very strange days, but my mum was immensely proud. If you could really upset the Daily Mail, the newspaper in the UK, then you can't be doing something too bad.
True. Very true. Do you feel like it's important to you, and it was always important to you, to have this mentally supportive background in your life? How do you feel about that? Is it important to have that background in your life?
I think it definitely helps. I think if you have a lot of burden of people telling you you can't do something, or the thing that you're doing isn't right or worthwhile, I think that would really dampen your spirits. But for me personally, it was just quite a nice added bonus. I mean, I always knew that I loved and adored video games, and I wanted to understand them as much as possible and create them. So for me, it was always like a first call. If I ever had a chance of a job of my dreams, it would be to make video games.
I see. You mentioned before that you transitioned from one AAA company to another. If you don't mind me asking this, what was the decision behind leaving Rockstar Games and transitioning to other companies as well?
Okay, I'm going to try and keep these answers quite short because I could ramble on about this for days. They're all a little bit surreal, but
I'm down to hear everything.
Actually,
so I love hearing people ramble. So that's why we are here now.
Well, to be honest, it was all complete and utter serendipity to leave Rockstar. At the time, we were doing wonderful work, and it was very exciting. Rockstar North is an extraordinary studio, and I'm extremely lucky to have got my launchpad there. I learned so much. But I was on holiday with my ex-girlfriend, and we were in Florence. And it was beautiful. We're walking around and we're seeing Ponte Vecchio, went to the Uffizi. We saw these different things. And as we were leaving, we just passed like a magazine shop, and they had an announcement for Assassin's Creed 2 at the time.
Oh, okay.
And it was all in, like Florence.
Okay.
So I remember sitting there going like, wow, imagine, designing something here. I mean, this would be mind-blowing. I thought that would be something extraordinary. So I picked up a phone and just said hello. I'm quite curious at throwing my hat in the ring to work on Assassin's Creed. And Ubisoft are really good people. They're very kind, and things move forward. And visas were done, bish bash bosh. It was on a plane pretty shortly after.
Nice.
That was that, really. It was I didn't really know anything about Montreal because that's where I'm located at the moment. I went in rather blind. I wanted it to be a bit of a surprise.
I see.
So it wasn't really for Montreal per se. It was mostly the project. I usually jump for the game if it's something that really interests me and excites me. Then I follow for what I'd like to create.
I see. And you
so
also...
that's
no, sorry for it. No, go for it.
No, I was just saying that that's how I ended up in Montreal, because
I
I
see.
went on holiday to Florence.
I see. I see. I see. I see. And what about the story behind like working on Bioshock Infinite? I also curious about that because it's also like a big game. So
Oh, it was actually again another random coincidence. I was actually at a party of a friend's house,
I see.
and he had a friend coming in from Boston, a very dear friend of mine, Eli, amazing, amazing audio designer. And he says, "You've got to meet my childhood friend, Joe. He's just like one of the sweetest guys in the world. And trust me, you got a lot in common." And so we were chatting, and I was explaining how much I was a massive fan of the Bioshock franchise, because
I
it just
see.
came up in conversation. And Joe was saying, "Yeah, we should talk. If you ever fancy a gig, it'd be good to talk." And I didn't know at the time that he was actually working in production on Bioshock Infinite.
I see.
So the next morning, I was chatting to Eli, and he seemed generally quite shocked that I wasn't spending more time with his mate Joe. Saying, "Yeah, this seems like one of your dreams." I
True.
kind of put it together. So when I found out that I made a terrible mistake, and I probably should have been, chatting to Joe a bit more on that night, I called him up, and yeah, he just booked up an interview, and I met the team, and again, like really wonderful people. Like the Irrational crew were really, really good lads and ladies.
I see. Thank
And
you.
so,
Thank you.
yeah, that was it really. Did the interviews, and then next thing you know, I'm now living in the USA.
I see. I see. Do you miss, by the way, those times in the for the AAA companies? Because of course, like you mentioned, you started to form your own company with those people who you came friends with from those companies. Do you miss working in the AAA industry, or not that much?
Well, it's kind of give and take, really. There
I
are
see.
certain things that you do miss, which is that when you do a job in AAA, you are doing one part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I left Ubisoft, I was doing more direction work.
I see.
Um, so you touched a lot of things, but even still, companies, especially like Ubisoft, they've got a person for absolutely everything,
I see.
which makes life a lot easier. But you also kind of feel a little bit separated out of the project at times,
I see.
because you don't really get the full picture. You go to work and you really hammer out your part and really make it shine.
I see.
And after that, it's kind of like, oh, the game is done. It's Ubisoft's. But with our company, the game is ours, and we had complete control, which was amazing for the feeling of creative control and power and liberation. It was, oh, wow, it's one of the best feelings in the world. Unfortunately, though, there's the other side of it, which is that we don't have like an army of marketing people. We don't
True.
have
True.
like
True.
a whole entire fleet of people to
True.
handle payroll and balances. So there's a lot of other stuff that comes into indie, which you're not really used to doing. Because I mean, I've never really been very front facing during development in
I
AAA.
see.
I've
I see.
always been more of a guy in the trenches. I like to really focus on the game and let the game speak for
I
itself.
see. I see.
But doing indie, it's completely different from that. You have to learn to wear many, many, many hats that you really just won't see coming. So, all in all, I prefer being indie, because I love what we do, and I love my friends, and I love our game. But, there definitely is a lot of, it's a lot easier in a way to make much bigger, scarier, imposing titles than it is to make something small and heartfelt.
True. True. Very true. So again, a more personal question from me would be: I believe that all of us creators who create our own craft, we always intend to put our inner self, our own past experiences about loss or love or anything that we experienced in the past, into the craft we make. Is this statement of mine true for your life as a game developer, even if it was the AAA games that you are working on, or even the indie ones? And also, could you name some examples? If yes.
For me, I try not to do that as much
I
as
see. I
possible.
see. I see.
I think it's extremely important to be inspired,
I see.
to look around you and see things that you love,
I
and
see.
try to assemble all these pieces to put it together to make that into a game.
I
I
see.
always draw from inspiration. But for my own personal stories to put it into the game, I try to shy away from that
I
so
see.
much.
I see.
I think it's much more interesting to be inspired by other stories or
Okay.
fantasy or
Okay.
works of
Okay.
fiction, and try to really respect the story
I
and
see.
try not to make it my story,
I see.
if
I
that
see. I
makes
see.
sense.
Yeah.
I think if I wanted to really talk about myself so much, I'd probably write a book or something. If uh,
True. True. True.
if I
True.
wanted to make entertainment and bring people to a place of escapism or fantasy, I would rather focus on what are the best stories that are the
I
most
see.
entertaining that I would love to tell,
I see. I see. I see.
as opposed to really put a lot of it about myself. I mean, that being said, every time you touch the keyboard or any time you do any kind of work, you do put a part of you
True.
in
True.
there.
True.
There's
It's
a
unavoidable,
subconscious
right?
level.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's impossible not to. You
True.
can't
True.
be completely detached from that.
True.
So that will always creep in on a subconscious level. But for me personally, I try to avoid
I
it
see.
because,
I see.
again, I prefer to stick with a story that I find to be rather fascinating and do my best to make that story shine within the world and the restraints and the goalposts of the rest of the project.
I see. I see. So let's talk about the influence of the story of Venture to the Whale. What influenced the story? Like you said, you wanted to tell with your team a very interesting story for the players. What influenced the story segments of the game?
I like to read a lot of books,
I see.
and I remember a lot of folklore from places I
I
grew
see.
up. And for me, I kind of didn't really want to write a story too much that's been told too many times,
I
or
see. I see.
retread old grounds, or really just kind of play to a lot of obviousness. I kind of thought it'd be much more interesting to build the world more as the world is the character in the story,
I see.
that you're just a passenger in it, really. And I kind of combined two stories that I really loved. One of them was the story of Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay. Okay.
And even though that there was very barely any narrative to it, the experience of going through the world and the journey that you had as a player, your transformation over time, I thought that was absolutely astounding. I
True.
thought that the story could be told through the gameplay
True.
itself.
True.
I
True.
thought that
Very
that
true.
was
Very
very
true.
powerful.
That was true for the Bioshock series, right? As well, those were the franchise that also like started this environmental storytelling in the AAA business, in my opinion, as well. Like on a
Oh,
higher level.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd say the first Bioshock's probably the best example of
True. True.
that
Very true. Very
that I've
true.
seen. It's great for that. So
True.
that kind of refined my tools a bit, so I could adapt to such a
I
story. So
see.
we could actually really build a world that would be able to deliver. And another book I really liked was I Am Legend by Richard
Okay.
Matheson.
Okay.
If you've seen the films, the Will Smith or Charlton
Yeah.
Heston,
Yeah.
very different from the book. Very, very
True. True.
different.
True. True.
I think the Vincent Price one was probably the closest, but that was a very kind of simple story. And I don't really want to tip my hand too much for anyone who hasn't played the game, but I tried to kind of fuse those two kind of elements
I
and
see.
make it our own.
I see.
And when you collaborate as well, you can either go in and be a bit of a dictator and say, "This is it. This is my art. This should be perfect," but that's always a tremendously missed opportunity because when you work with other people, especially with such talent, it's good to kind of let them breathe to bring things to the table. And I always encourage that in the team for everyone to feel like they've got their fingerprints on it in
I
some
see. I
way.
see. I see. I see.
And it makes also the story feel a little bit more fleshed out and realized. It doesn't feel like just, one person writing it. I think that having a collaboration of people to jump in and shout out to Sally, who's one of our writers that we had on contract for a while. She brought a lot of essential writing to the table. Having a different perspective for characters really, really helps and makes them feel a bit more believable.
I see.
So you could fall into a bit of, if you're not a really talented writer, no, if you're not like Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, or something like that, you can fall into a trap of writing something and then all the characters sound like you, which is
True.
just a sign of a bad writer, really. So it also kind of bulletproofs that because different perspectives and different
True.
take
True.
on
True.
characters
True.
really, really helps flesh them out and makes them more than just an outline on a piece of paper
True.
that
True.
I'm
True.
trying to flesh out.
Very true. Very true. Throughout the development process of Venture to the Wild, were there anything, by the way, that you guys had to cut out from the game, and maybe you also been able to reuse it at the later date of the process of making it?
Um, at the moment, no, we're quite, we haven't been able to really revisit and to make more DLC content. Is
I
something
see.
that we'd love to do,
I see.
but
I see. I see.
you know, it's something we got a pin on at the moment.
I see.
We have plenty of ideas that we really kind of got close to pulling the trigger on,
I see.
but again, being first time indie, it's extremely difficult, especially for such a small team doing a project so ambitious. So we tried to kind of keep it quite lean. If you saw the original world map of what I originally had sketched out, it was, oh, we'll be working on it for another 10 years. It would have been absolutely insane. So we definitely had to kind of triage a lot of things when we're building a team, because it really comes down to what people can deliver. And when you get funding and you have to ramp up very fast, you don't really know the velocity and the content you can make, because you don't know who it is that's on the team yet, because you haven't actually filled all the seats.
True.
So you have to kind of really plan the project as well for a little bit of retrofitting to see exactly when you all gel together as a team, you start hitting your stride, and you know the contractors are coming in to really kind of get a more accurate point of
I see.
view of
Sorry.
what you can and can't create, because feature creep or overscoping is a absolute death sentence for indie. And even if you do manage to triage it all at the last minute, you can always tell when someone's taken a hatchet to a project.
I see. I
And
see.
we wanted to rather, well, avoid that at all
I
costs.
see. I see. I see. So again, a more personal question from me would be: how have you changed as a person in other territories of your own life by being a game developer for so many years with so many experience? If you changed,
Well,
of course, in any direction in any
I
other
mean,
territories of your own life.
oh no, absolutely. I mean, we change every day. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
change is a natural part of
True.
life.
True.
It's
True. True.
definitely that way. It really depends on the project. I
I
think
see.
a lot of games are very demanding to make.
I see.
Because of that, a lot of your life has to kind of get put on hold. So I think over the years, especially being indie, where there's a lot of hours and it's pretty intense,
I see.
that you kind of become a little bit more of a mad hermit recluse because you're constantly working. So if anything, it kind of calms you down over time. It
I see.
doesn't. That doesn't kind of make you more crazy or extroverted. It kind of just, you know, kind of keeps you humble in a way.
I see.
So I think I was a lot more mad when I first started this out back in 2002 than I am now.
I
It's
see.
yeah.
Do you think like
Ma-
the causing effect could be that you switched to indie, by the way, or
with indie, I think that the biggest impact it's had on me personally was you have to really, for lack of a better word, grow up really, really fast.
I see. I see.
Because when you start a company, you know, your friends and you know people are starting, well, completely dependent on you
True.
for
True. True.
like
True.
livelihood, for basically you know taking care of
It's not
everyone.
just about you
So
anymore, right? So it's not just the work,
yep.
but you have to like help people as well. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I know that there are probably some people that when they get the ability to run everything their way, they can have a right field day with it. But I think that the responsibility of, you know, making sure we got to treat everyone right as much
True.
as
True.
we
True.
possibly can, and you know, try to find security for people. I think that one really made all of us, you know, grow up
I
very
see.
fast,
I see.
because we're no longer just picking up a paycheck. We are the paycheck. So
True. True. True.
we have
True. True.
to
True.
really kind of adapt to that kind of thinking.
True. 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 So throughout all those years that you worked on games, what was your favorite part of working on video games, or parts if there are more?
The most enjoyable part, I know it sounds silly, but it's always the last 10% of a game
Okay.
when you see that happen.
Okay.
Because for the longest times, when you're working in an editor and you got the settings down low, so you know you can work on all the tech and everything, you don't really see the game. You just see a part of the game.
I see.
And you know, every game, like 6 months out from launch, everyone gets sweaty palms and they're like, "Oh, this doesn't feel, you know, like at the level that we want it to be." And then when you get really, really close to the end, and then you see all the switches turn on, and then you pick up the pad and you just play through everything, and then you see it all come together, and everything starts getting the polish, and you always get that wonderful little moment of butterflies in your belly, and you just think, oh, I think we've done something good. And it's just that it's always right near the end where you get that light bulb moment that something clicks, and then you see everyone's work that goes into a project, and that feels tremendously rewarding. There's something very special about that feeling.
I see. So you have spoken about your favorite parts. What about the hardest parts throughout all those years that you worked on video games?
Usually, again, it's the same answer, really. The last 6 months, isn't it? Because
that's love and hate relationship, right?
That's where things usually get, quite intense. I mean, every project is completely different. Every project, regardless of AAA, indie, they're about similar to each other as they are different. So it really depends on who you're working with and how they make games. But when you get to the end, very frequently, my experience, that there's a tremendous amount of bugs, and there's an awful lot of work to do to put it in the box. You've got all your optimizations to go through. There's 101 edge cases that come up right at the last minute that was never caught by play tests or QC, and then suddenly you get some very abstract issues. But time is short, and also for the motivation being quite high for passion to make it the best it can be, then that creates a tremendous amount of stress, because nobody wants to put out work into a game and the reviews come out and they say, oh, that bit was quite janky, or that bit was a bit boring. You always want your work to really stand out.
True, very true. So I was wondering, by the way, since you told us that you always loved to tell stories through your games, is it that the story came first to Venture to the Wild, or the gameplay itself, or the theme? I was wondering about that. Like, what was the very first click and idea of the whole game?
It's actually evolved a tremendous amount of time before it got to Venture to the Vile. I was always playing around with an idea in the back of my head of a similar but very different game. I made a prototype in my spare time just for fun, like a very long time ago, where I created an engine in XNA. Back in those days, like the days of Fez and all that stuff and Braid, we didn't really have access to editors, so you just kind of had to make your own engine. And so I worked on a very simple prototype that was really kind of more derived on a Tim Burton short called Vincent. And that's kind of where the idea started. I always loved the idea of that kind of cute but spooky world with a bit of tongue-in-cheek and a bit of the macabre. And I thought, oh, this is just so much fun, just creating a world for this to exist. And once we, I kind of put it down because XNA pretty much kind of got abandoned, and it was mostly a hobby thing, just for fun. I love making games, even in my spare time, and bitmap that. That's I kind of put it on a shelf and forgot about it for a long time. And then the opportunity came up, and so that was kind of like a launch pad. But then it was about a good 10 years later, so ideas change, and your skills change, and then we realized we could go a lot further. And then with collaboration with the other co-founders, people brought a lot to the table. And from each of these discussions that we had, one by one, it just refined it and refined it and refined it until it became the project that it is today. But the general ideas all come from many different inspirations. The creepy masks, for example, were just one day finding a book in an old bookstore and flicking through pages, and then seeing Victorian Halloween costumes. And there was a picture of a nurse with like an actual Victorian nurse, but she was wearing a pig mask. And I found it incredibly disturbing and amazing fun. And so we worked with that narrative, and we thought that would really help give the world a more fantastic feel, because we didn't want to make a Victorian town per se. We wanted to make something that felt Victorian inspired, but it was a completely different world of folklore, of like whimsicalness. So we wanted to make it feel kind of otherworldly. So we always had intent of what we wanted to do. That kind of came just quite naturally. The bit that was kind of tricky is just working out the goalposts, because uh, a lot of the conversations that we had was that, okay, we could introduce this aspect to the game narratively or in gameplay, but it doesn't feel very Victorian. And then we'd have to have these big debates like saying, but we can look it up. And yes, the Victorian era was such an astoundingly insane part of time that you would be surprised that we could actually justify it. However, it's not the fantasy what people have in pop culture of their head of Victorian fantasy. So if you actually dig deep, like there's an amazing book called How to Be Victorian,
Oh, okay.
where this and there's this lady, and she basically lived for 2 years just doing everything as
Wow.
if like in a 10-year period of the Victorian
I
era
see, I see,
of
I see.
exactly how they did it, and it was just astoundingly
Wow.
amazing.
Okay.
um, so we could, but the things that you think about from Victorian, you kind of think kind of more of like a Tim Burton-y kind of Corpse Bride
True,
kind of
true, true,
feel,
true, true, true.
rather than
Very
you do
true.
actually think of really what it was like. So we had to be very careful about how we do that.
I
We
see.
don't want to keep it too restrictive, but we also wanted to kind of feel a bit genuine.
I see.
We
I
didn't want
see.
to start like throwing in crazy things like planes or anything like that, which you know was very, very close at that time to being a thing.
True, true, true. Very true, very true. Okay. So very like I'm not sure if I can ask this question, but I will try and we will see what happens. So I read an article about like after the launch of Venture to the Wild, there were some like issues and arguments in the team of yours. So what was the causing effect of that thing that some people like left your team, or what was the causing effect behind that? Of course, if you don't want to answer that, it's totally
Oh, no,
fine.
no,
Like
no, that's
I was
totally
just
fine.
curious and also sad about the fact because when I first played your game, it was really like an awesome feeling for me, and I was totally sad by hearing about this news. I'm not sure if the news were like very like honest because of course like I don't believe in video game journalism anymore because I worked as a video game journalist and I know that there is corruption everywhere and people love to like spread hateful and like very non-honest articles about video game industry people, developers, publishers as well. And that's why I left every company. So I couldn't deal with the fact that people are doing that, and I didn't want to get involved in that. I'm more an honest guy, and more of a positive guy. So I was curious about and interested about what really happened. If you can
Okay,
talk about
so
that, of
no,
course.
no, absolutely, I don't mind.
Thank you.
So it wasn't arguments. It
Okay.
wasn't that we fell out or
Okay.
anything like that.
Okay. Okay.
We're on really good terms. I
I see.
mean,
I see. I see. I
we
see.
started this project as being good friends, and we're pretty much wrapping up the Sony port, and we're all up at the studio and having a few beers together, and it was nice. No, the problem was though, really, when you're indie, it's very, very hard to sustain
I
a
see.
lot of
I
contractors.
see. I see. I see. I see.
Because we ideally wanted to sell like tremendous numbers, and
Yeah,
then
understandable.
make everyone permanent, and
True.
then
True. True.
really kind of build on that. But we were quite buried at launch. We had
I
a
see.
very low visibility launch on the PC. So because of that, the revenue was pretty tight, and if we wanted to go to porting, we had to operate on a skeleton team, going back
I
down
see.
to
I
like the
see. I see.
co-founders. So basically, it was more of a revenue thing. It
I
wasn't
see.
that we were super rich and we all fell out or anything. Like, no, no, no.
Yeah, I
It's
knew it. I
nothing to
knew it.
do with
It's just
that.
like
It's
articles
just
were totally
sadly.
harsh about that, right? So that's why I wanted to clear things out, right?
No,
For a
no,
good
like I
reason.
say, there's
Yeah.
like everyone, they put their heart and souls into the
Yeah,
project,
yeah, yeah.
and they're happy that we're still going in some limited capacity of having to really go to a skeleton crew just
That's
to
why
get
I hate
ports
that
at
a
the
lot
door.
of like sorry for interrupting, but that's why I hate that video game journalists love to like, spread this hateful and very like downscaling articles about if if or when a company is like closing itself or like some people like leave the company because they always like state the article like it would be like an argument between people, or it would be like a very bad thing, but they do not like search behind the reason. They do not go behind the curtain. It's so sad to see these things, right? Because people would think that these people who are video game journalists, their work is to be honest and do the research, right? So, but they are not doing that, and it's crazy to me. So, yeah.
Well, it's like I say, it was very, very sad. I mean, like
Yeah.
the summer was tremendously difficult, and I won't lie, it was utterly heartbreaking. The best joy of really for me to work on video games, so being quite vocal about is collaboration.
True, true,
To
true. You
have people
mentioned it.
around you,
Yeah.
and especially when you're close friends, and we felt like a very well knit team. But the problem is, if you're indie and you don't have huge bankrolls and you
True,
kind
true,
of
true.
live and die by your titles,
True.
no matter how good the game is, if your PR and your marketing isn't like super 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 on point, and
True.
we came out in a very very crowded time in the market. We had we made some bad decisions. We had much worse luck, so we kind of hit some speed bumps. But it's something that we're trying to fix. I mean, with the ports and the PlayStation that comes out on the 29th of November, a bit of a shameless pitch there.
Oh, okay.
But when
Spoiler
the
time.
PlayStation
Exclusive information. I can see. Thank you.
So when we go out to ports and
Okay.
we turn it around, the first thing that we want to do is not to live large and fill our pockets. The first thing to do is to try and get everyone more security and back on the payroll,
True.
and to
Understandable. Yeah.
really try and undo that. It was unfortunately just a necessity of business rather than it really was anything personal.
I see.
As far as fights go, like creatively, there were, I think I could count on one hand where things got a little bit heated. And when I say a bit heated, it was just people very passionate about making sure we're committing to the right direction for the right time.
I see. I see.
And after about 3 minutes, then it's all over. And at the end of the day, we're hanging out at the pub, having a beer together, having a jolly good giggle, really. So, I mean, we weren't really like going at loggerheads.
Yeah, but that's passion, right?
Of,
so if you're passionate about something, you will always have these arguments sometimes, or will be like hot-headed sometimes. I can imagine that,
it's a good sign.
Yeah, true. There was also like a famous writer who said something about, I can't remember the quote exactly, but it was something similar to this topic, that if you are so passionate about something, you have to have those like very hot-headed arguments with others, right? Because you're trying to get others to the same point and also help others grow, and yourself as well. So you will be this hot-headed dude who is like sometimes yelling with others, but not because he's mad at them, right? So you just want to have...
No, again, I think this also comes with time, with because a lot of the team that we had, the co-founders, we've all been doing this for such a long time.
True.
And we can always extrapolate out when people are feeling quite heated because they're really passionate about something, or if they're tired and they've been working so hard on something, they really have like a horse in the race on it.
True.
As opposed to being personal. I think that when people start attacking each other personally, then that is a terrifying red flag in a team, and you have to shut that down immediately. You can't let that go out there.
True.
We always made a point of being respectful to each other as possible.
I see.
We try to really help people and support each other rather than to yell the most passionately or pull rank on each other, because that's not how great work comes together.
Very true. Do you believe, by the way, that in the future those people who left your company might be able to get back into working together with you and the others that left in your company? How do you feel
That's not a question I would really like to answer, because people have got new gigs, and we were very careful to make sure that we could make sure everyone hits the ground running, and we opened up a lot of doors. And by saying, obviously in my heart, I would love to have everyone back, but if I said yes, then I'm kind of jeopardizing people's careers, really, if I'm trying to say things like that. And honestly, it's really it's all down to the individual. You can't make choices for people.
True. It's true.
But for me personally, I adore my team. This isn't really my game. It's truly is our game.
It's a
everyone
team
that
game.
worked on it is put their heart and soul into
I understand.
it.
So, I just was curious if you would like to work with them again, or it's like
absolutely.
They found a new way.
The team was fantastic. Yeah, I've got that was that was good.
I see, I see, I see, I see, I see, I see, I see. What about the future? So, like, are you planning like still making games, or will there be a time in the future when you like, I don't know, start to like write books, like you mentioned, because you also mentioned writing books?
Um, I think that if you work in video games, then you kind of don't really have a huge amount of time, especially if you're
I
indie,
see,
to
I see,
pursue other kind of hobbies that are so invested. When you work on something and as an indie project, it's kind of generally all consuming. So it takes up all your days and your nights, and you know the last thing you think about going to bed, and the first thing you think about when you wake up with the alarm clock, it's like, all right, time to get to work. Um, so for really right now, it's mostly about getting out there, trying to promote the game, work on the ports, and make sure we get it to as many platforms as possible.
I see,
And that's basically our main focus right now. For other works in the pipeline, we haven't really got to that point yet
I
because we're
see,
still kind of finishing up the back end
I
of this
see, I see, I
project.
see, I see,
So
I
the
see.
timing wouldn't be right. And to start changing priorities now, to
Yeah,
start thinking about
understandable.
something like that, would be splitting ourselves a bit too thin. So
True, true, true.
we really are quite focused on the task at hand. So once we pass these gates, then yes, we'll definitely start thinking up something more wonderful and magical again.
I see, I see. So you also mentioned like having the console versions out, but what about the physical editions? Are you planning to like release physical editions of the games, or of the
Uh,
game? Sorry, to
at
the
present,
platforms.
no, we don't really have a plan for that. Physical editions, especially in this kind of day and age, are only really kind of on the table if you make very big numbers, like you're the less than 1% of indie that really do wonderful sales and you really hit a zeitgeist. Me personally, as you can probably see, all around the place. I love physical
Yeah,
copies
that's
and I
why I
like
was
to
asking it
collect
because
it.
I noticed it.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it would be a cool thing to have your game on your shelf, right? So that
Oh,
makes sense.
absolutely. It'd be, I'd adore that very much. I think that would be brilliant. But there's a bit more work to be done
I
before I
see,
can physically hold a tangible copy.
I see, I
Until
see, I
then,
see,
it's going to be digital. All that being
I
said,
see.
as part of our PR, we worked with some phenomenal artists in the comic book industry to write like a compendium, something that goes
I
along with
see,
the game.
I
And
see, I
so we
see.
did our own run of a comic book, and just holding a physical comic book and having your name with some of the artists that we had involved in the project was tremendously proud. So until we can get an actual, physical copy for brick and mortar, the comic book suffices, and I'm very proud of that.
Nice, 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 nice. Okay. What about the music part of the game, by the way? I was very interested in the music part of the game as well. Who made the music, and how did he get invited to the team, or was he someone who you worked with and were friends before as well?
Yeah, so the music team is actually one of the longest and oldest stories.
Okay,
I kind of I'm a big sucker for a beautiful score of a game.
okay,
So when we made this, I didn't want to cheap out on that. I really wanted to
I
make
see,
sure that when we started production, we had music in mind from the start,
I see.
so that we could really sink our teeth in it and really make it gel with the tremendous art that was coming together by Naj Salas, tremendous artist, one of the co-founders. Um, so another one of our co-founders is a man called Olaf, who is absolutely wonderful, a very dear friend. We worked on little prototypes beforehand, just for fun, just to, you know, sometimes it's good just to do the craft, just to be satisfied.
True,
There's
true, true,
something just
true,
fun about making these weird little projects.
true.
And so Olaf took like a lot of the overall direction.
I see.
He worked with me on that. And then he did a lot of more of the moment to moment sounds, like a lot of the Foley sounds, the environmental sounds, all of the creature designs. He directed all the mumbles for the VO shoots for all the NPCs. And that was a tremendously long undertaking because I wrote a lot and we've got about 50 characters in the game. So there is tremendous amounts to record. Which for a first time indie was pretty intense, but it's amazing that actually all landed. Like it didn't get cut. That was brilliant. But the other piece of the puzzle was the composer, who is a man called Dave Wallace. And when I was working on my very first prototype in XNA back at in Edinburgh, he was a very, very dear close friend of mine and a tremendously talented musician. He usually kind of like headlines and peaks over at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and the Jazz Fest, and he's very well known in Edinburgh and extraordinarily talented. And because we were roommates at uni and we were very, very close friends and still are to this day, a terrific lad, we chat all the time. I gave him an offer saying, look, could we get a chunk of your time? It's going to be a long project. I'm going to need you here for years. I mean, we really need to get you in early so we can really work out how to do this. And so we tried a few things. We tried some very ambient stuff, and we tried not to really make it too musical. We tried to really make it that the world felt more visceral and more in the moment and less fairy tale like. And we were having tremendous difficulties really trying to land that, because it always felt like a little bit less haunting and a little bit more empty, if that makes sense.
Yes.
We found it hard to do that. And then, Dave, he's almost like telepathic. You can sit down with him, and what I'll do, I'll say, okay, look, we're trying to compose the game to have a general progression of feelings. So every biome you go to, every time you go into a place, we're building to something, and something has to have a feeling. So we kind of made a weird chart saying, okay, how sinister, how cute, how creepy, like all these different kind of words, and rate them out of 10, and use different kind of inspirational tracks. And, we'll discuss it, and he would go away in a day or two. He would come back with something rough. And when Dave gives you something rough, it's better than what most games would ship with. I mean, he's just insane talent. And he'll say, I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Is this is what you wanted? And then I'll just listen to it, and every time just say tremendous amounts of thank you. So the music was something we really got in early with. We didn't want to just cobble it all together at the end. We really wanted it to feel like it progresses and was a part of the game as much as any other part. We didn't want to overlook that.
I see. So speaking of that, you mentioned that the work with your team members was so fluent and nice. Do you believe in perfect synergy between team members, or is it something that it develops out through the process of working together? I was wondering about that. How do you feel about this?
I kind of started off building the team with a lot of history with working with friends and knowing what they can do. So for me, when I started off, I kind of started thinking about putting a team together. It was really looking at what am I really bad at, because I know what my strengths are, and I also know my weaknesses. Now, there are many things that I know I could probably attempt, but I'm not the best person for the job. So you start with the needs. What are the needs of the project? And from that, there was lists of many great people, and we always had very good working relationships. In our personal lives, we would spend a lot of time together.
I see.
So when starting out like that, that worked really well. When we were hiring up for contractors and we were bringing in the team for the last year and a half to really kind of go full on production, it was a little bit more trickier, because you have to, it's mostly about down to the interview process and like the trial process. You kind of realize if someone is not going to be a fit because they don't have the skills, or if they just personally they're not really happy there. They don't really gel, or they want something else, then that usually becomes quite apparent. But for the vast majority of the team, like first time met them, good gut feeling, and everyone got us to the finishing line. And for that, it's we got extremely lucky. Some of the team that we had are just tremendously talented, and very, very grateful to have had them on the project.
I see. So I was also wondering, by the way, what was the influence behind choosing the genre as Metroidvania for your game? What was the influence behind that idea or choice, let's say?
There was the original idea of when I started this a long time ago. It was because I was on I was on like GTA 4, we were coming off the end of that at Rockstar, and I had
see.
a bit of time on my hands in between jumping between studios, and at that time, there really wasn't an awful lot out of Metroidvanias, because I remember going back and playing Symphony of the Night again and just thinking, the genre kind of peaked. Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind, this must have been about 2009. So, I mean, it was a long time before,
True, true.
the genre went massive.
True, very
So
true.
it was always about just thinking, wow, like imagine if we could start fusing like new genre elements within the genre. Like for me, it was always a no-brainer working in open world games all the time. Let's try to make it a less copy-paste Metroidvania playing by the rule book, and let's really try to infuse something new into the genre.
I see.
Which is why we got the layer systems,
Yeah.
the time of day, the weather, like the dynamic progression of quests and all the NPCs. A game is as much of an action adventure open world game as it is kind of a Metroidvania.
I see.
So that's kind of where we started. And again, I just really love Metroidvanias. So when we kind of came to making this project after so many years of seeing all the old notebooks of musings, and many years later revisiting it and having a look, there was a tremendous amount of games that came out that are absolutely phenomenal. So that also changed a lot of decisions as well, because the genre did actually change quite a lot over those years in between. I mean, something like Guacamelee, where you have like extremely
love that
hardcore
game. Love that
fighting
game. Oh my
system,
god.
and
Yeah.
the whole kind of switch in between
Yeah.
like the
Yeah. It was
reality
a
thing
very
was
good
just like
game. Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's like that in itself was a milestone. And then you got games like Hollow Knight, which also then fused like the From Software kind
True,
of
true, true, true,
ethos
true,
into the
true,
world, and
true,
then that created a whole new thing that made it breathe in a different
true,
way.
true, true, true.
There's so many tremendous Metroidvania games that have been chipping away to really push things. So one of the reasons that we wanted to make a Metroidvania was to throw our hat in the ring and try to do something different. For us, it was mostly world first. Again, like if you walking around an environment, it always felt very sad to me that you'd see art in the background of these tremendously interesting places, and that's not for you. That's just pretty things, and it's like, oh no, like that just you kind of want to really go deeper into the world. And if there's interesting things in the background in our game, it's not parallax art, that's actually gameplay you go to. So that seemed like an interesting thing to do. So that's kind of why we did it. We just wanted to try to push things a little bit further. We didn't want to retread old ground. We wanted to try and try and do something a bit different.
I see. I see. The thing, by the way, by working on games for so many years with so many experience, you found yourself in your life. Like you said, it was always a dream for you. But do you feel like now that you worked on so many games and also your own game with your team members, you found yourself in life, and also like you are at the right spot, right place, we should say?
Sure. I mean, I don't think that there really is a destination at any one point of time in life, really.
True,
I
true, true,
think
true,
life is
true.
just something
No,
that
I'm just
happens and you
asking if
adapt to, really.
true, true,
But
very true, very true. But are you happy with the state of your life that you were working on so many games and also got the chance to
oh,
form your team and work on your own game?
sure. Over the last 20 years, I've managed to travel a good deal of the world. I've met so many tremendous people that very
I'm
close
asking this,
friends
by the way.
with.
Sorry for interrupting you. I'm
No,
asking
not
this
at all.
because, like, I feel like a lot of people like still end up in this like rabbit hole where they are not pursuing their dreams and they just live for the society standards, but they don't end up using their own talents. That's why I was asking if you feel that you are in the right place at the right time, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, especially at their 30s and 40s, end up like having a family, kids, house, car, but they still end up like not being able to like pursue their dreams anymore because they get old, right? And it's getting harder for them to like reach out with their talents and to work in in that field which they are talented in. But you managed to do that, so I think it's very important, and it's
Oh
must
yeah.
be a nice
I mean,
feeling
like
for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I really think about, to be honest.
I
It's
see.
it's just kind of like how life is. It's just what I know. I've
I
been
see.
doing it for so long,
I
everything
see.
just kind of flows this way. Um, am I happy to be a person that gets to work with their friends and be, creative and do the things that I love? Oh, tremendously so. I don't think there's really anything else I'd rather do than to create video games. And I'm very fortunate to have started, and I've had tremendous luck. I mean, it's been tremendous amounts of luck. I mean, going from a computer science degree and crossing the road and then finding yourself at probably the biggest and one of the most greatest companies in the industry as they were really getting noticed. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of luck that goes along with it, and for that I am grateful. Every day very, very fortunate in that respect. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I don't really have any revelations like that Talking Heads song. What am I doing here? That's not my beautiful wife to do really bad impersonation of Ed Byrne there. But no, I don't really get those feelings. I feel very happy.
I see. I see.
Obviously there are sadness with it. As you brought up earlier that obviously I wish the game had got more notice and more traction, and I wish that we could expand the team. It was the shrinkage was definitely not because of any inner turmoil. It was
Yeah, I knew it. I
literally
knew it.
just a
I mean,
business thing. So
I was thinking
that's my
about
biggest
it.
regret,
It's just
really.
I was sad that articles put it in a very like very unfair way, saying that not explaining what really happened, and that's what I was saying, that video game
Well,
journalism nowadays is
Miss
very corrupt about it. Like,
Well, misery loves company, right? And especially in this climate where, again, we had a bit of bad luck. I mean, at this point in time, the industry is hurting very severely. We see closures everywhere.
yeah,
We see decline in sales, and we also see, especially in the indie scene, and
true,
like
true,
the
true,
month we came out with two stunning, amazing games, Animal Well and Nine Souls. So, in such a short period of time, with market saturation, with a lower population of people picking up games at this time right now,
true,
it's
true,
it's
true,
not
true,
doing great. And then also, generally in the industry, it's heartbreaking because we're seeing tremendous amounts of layoffs,
true,
and that is really, really genuinely heartbreaking.
true, very true.
So, I mean, like when a journalist sees another company that's beginning to downsize and they're beginning to go to skeleton team to weather it out,
True,
then
true, very true,
blood's in the water, and it's it makes for a click. It
true,
just continues the narrative of misery loves company that we're seeing right now,
true,
and
very true, very
it's
true.
it's very sad. But video games is an industry with a lot of growth potential,
True.
and I think it's a very prominent media, and I think it's going to definitely bounce back and get better again. It's just
Yeah, in my
basically weathering
opinion
it out
too.
for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I always say this on my dev live shows, that I feel like indie scene will grow itself out to AAA and found a middle ground with those people who got laid out from the AAA, and they will find each other in the middle ground. And I think that in, I don't know, 2 or 4 or maybe 10 years, like indie and AAA, by meeting each other in the triple ground, will form like a new golden age of video game industry within a new AAA. Because I feel like you said, it's very true, and I talked about this with other devs as well, that people who worked in the AAA industry, they probably all of them, or at least most of them, had an idea for their own game, right? So if they got fired or laid out, or they left the AAA company, they will probably take the first step in order to make their own game, right? But I mean, all of those people who have their own idea, they might have been bigger ideas as well, even if they don't start with that really big idea, right? But if they will manage to be able to like go through all the phases of indie, they will end up like making that very big dream game idea, right? Which will be again a AAA game then, probably, or hopefully, right? So I really feel like I really can see this like phase of like the indie and AAA meeting each other at the middle ground, and having not just conversations with other, but really learning from each other, and not like because for me it's very interesting that like I said before, and it's very true about what you said as well, is that not just video game journalism, but like the player's perspective really changed. I remember myself, I always say this as a kid, we used to love games, and I'm still that naive kid who loves to play with every game, but my surrounding like player base who I know, and also like seeing the hateful speech and ongoing like cancel culture on the internet makes me really sad, because like I miss those times when like gaming in general was a niche hobby to pursue and a niche passion to pursue for loving and playing games. Because back then I feel like it might be a nostalgia feeling, but still I feel like there wasn't that much of hate on video games like nowadays. And it makes me really sad, because like people hate on everything, not just on AAA games, but now on indie scene as well. It's crazy to me. Like,
I think it's I don't really think that it's the video game like demographic of what a player is that has become worse over time. I think it's mostly because that the communication tools that we have now, and sounding old, but with the rise of the internet,
true, true,
people generally, when they are behind a keyboard,
easier,
they can put out a kind of worse version of themselves.
true,
I mean, if you're a kid in the playground, you just reading magazines with your friends, and that is the gaming community for all extensive purposes,
true,
because we weren't all connected. If somebody came across and were just being mean and a jerk, then that doesn't work out well for them, because this you're personally there. But on the
true,
internet,
true,
you've got
true,
the
true, very
you're
true,
anonymous. You
very
you
true,
can
very
do
true.
these things.
Yeah,
I think it's more something down to human nature, really, of
true,
basically going into a more of a tribal mentality,
true.
which to me I find tremendously sad.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think people that try to gatekeep games, or try to really tell what people can and can't play, and for reasons,
True, true. I
I find
agree
to
with
be
you.
sad, because the reason one of the reasons one of the things I did when I started this game is I wanted it to be a game for as many people as possible. I didn't want it to be one thing that was very exclusive to a particular crowd, scene, age demographic, or by gender or anything like that. It was basically I love making games, and I love people to play games, and I want as many people just to play it. I
True,
mean, that was the whole point of it, and it wasn't for the so much for the financial reasons that do go hand in hand with that, but it was more of the fact that, well, that's the goal, isn't it? You
true.
want to make something beautiful, and you want people
And
to
that is
enjoy
fun
it.
to play.
And
Yeah,
so
exactly,
then
exactly.
it's just sad if people then start saying, well, if you haven't played this game, or if you haven't played that game, you don't deserve to be at the table for this or that. And it just gets all rather silly, doesn't it? I
True,
mean,
true,
for me,
true,
it's just to put something out beautiful for people to enjoy, and just to go to a wonderful place of
true,
whimsical folklore and stories, and just
true,
to be in a different mind space for some hours, for as long
true,
as you want to play.
true.
Um, but yeah, I think it's more of that we are, with the internet being basically anonymous,
True,
and
true. It's very
the
true. I
rise of
agree with
that.
you on
I
that.
think
Yeah,
that that's where a lot of it comes from. I don't
yeah,
really think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
video games was really that bad.
No, 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 no. You got me wrong. Like they never been bad in my opinion. Like it's just I feel like people weren't that bad in, like, because you said it's very true. It's connected. What I just said is that there wasn't internet, so it's like in person they weren't like smacking each other in the face, but still like with the help of the internet they rised up with this hateful speech. And I also feel like I always say this, that I feel like players do not really know what a good game is for them. I always joke with this, that players from the player's perspective, they have this high expectation of not really knowing what a good game is for them, and they end up being very sad every time they see a new game, because like none of the games will be appealing for their high and unknown expectations. And that's how a lot of people end up like saying that, oh, this game sucks, that game sucks, you shouldn't play this game. And it makes me it I know it's hard to believe, but it really makes my heart break, because I care about games so much and I played so many games over all the years. I'm now 31, and I'm always joking this, that I'm that dying out dinosaur who loves playing with all games and trying to consume all games. And I feel like I'm so disconnected from this player base that is happening now, because everyone is a gamer now, right? Which on the one side is good, because like gaming industry can produce more and more games, more income, more games, right? It's good. But
Mhm.
on the other side is like I feel like there is so hard to like, even if I mention a small example, there is so hard nowadays to like really have a good conversation with a person who also loves video games and who might be not a developer, just a player, because people are like not that much interested anymore in reading about games or researching about games, because like you said, at that time there were journals and about games, and that's it, right? There was like no internet. You had to buy the journal or you had to go to the shop to buy games. Now, with the help of internet, people have all the information, and still people do not know about games. A lot of people in my community as well, like play one game and they are happy with that. And when I'm telling them this new game is out, that game is out, it's like, wow, really? This is such an awesome game. So it's like, I feel like it's not just on the promoting side that it's hard to like promote a game, but also feel like a lot of players nowadays are not that passionate like we used to be as kids. And still some of us like remain like me, and you passionate about being games. So I think it's really that the lack of the passion shows in people, in my opinion, at least.
I think it's a very interesting point you brought up. Another thing that is quite difficult is to really be able to peruse the vast amount of what's coming out.
True.
It's very tricky because there's usually in the indie scene you'll get a dozen or so games of the year, and they're the picks, and pretty much everything that doesn't make into that top tier list is pretty much going to have a hard time. You can break even, you can make a couple of bucks out of it, but it's going to be quite intense. So that's kind of the odds are kind of stacked against you on that kind of respect. So that makes it kind of tricky. I don't think that there's a lot of deep diving. I think there was I saw something recently, an article pop up that for the Game Awards ceremony, one of the indie devs was told, like, to be honest, we're the short list of like 3 indie games, and he goes, we've got enough visibility. He goes, these are the games that I've been playing in the last year that I really loved, and there's just no visibility for it. And seeing another developer go out of their way to shine a spotlight on other games that by rights could be sitting up there next to them, and just because that the developer genuinely loved and enjoyed these experiences to show it, because either you're in the limelight or you're not. And so I thought that was a tremendously kind thing to do. I mean, I thought that was a jolly good show on that person's behalf. But again, I was just kind of skim reading, so I'm terrible with names or the devs. Did you think it was? I don't want to misquote or give someone else that credit,
game?
But yes, actually, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. But I thought that was incredibly kind. I thought that was a jolly good thing to do. But that kind of shows that there is kind of more of a need, because this is what people are looking for, to see indie games. And one of the guys, or like the part of the team there, they turned around and just said, well, look, it's huge out there. There's so much gold. There's so much out there. So I think it would help if there was more curation. That it's not always a stampede for the next big hit, and everyone reviews that and that's talked about. It's just something to kind of distribute the information a bit more even.
Very true.
But the other thing is, it's a business as well, right? So I mean, journalists, they want to get the click flow, they want to have
but that's the
revenue.
That's
so they jump on the big ones.
True. But in the past, it wasn't like that. I remember myself reading Playzone all the time. That's a Hungarian magazine. Was like when I was like 15 or 14, and it was a very big magazine here in Hungary. And it had almost all the games reviewed, almost all the AAA games, and even smaller, like, let's say, AA games that has been released to PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 back in that time. And I think that, I mean, I understand on one point that it's business from video game journalist side, and also like the streamer side, because of course we have to include streamers and YouTubers as well, because they are promoters of games as well. But still, I feel like if a person has passion in the industry, even if it's a PR person, even if it's a journalist person, even if it's like a streamer, YouTuber, who really have the possibility, because he has a huge audience, he really should take the risk and show the people. I mean, the risk is like, if you like show people a game that wouldn't be appealing to them, you might lose some viewers. But you have to take that risk, because like at the end of the day, you are doing this not just for the money. I hope that they are not doing. See, that's the naive kid in me, right? That's the naive kid who loves playing games and would like to promote all the games. And I think it matters at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, I feel like the disconnection between indie and AAA makes like an unwanted war between the two, like, let's say, factions, right? Because like you cannot say that you are playing just, or for me at least, it's unfair when people say that, okay, I'm just playing with AAA or I'm just playing with indie, because like they are not even giving a chance for the other factions games to try out. As you said, there are both gems in both scenes, right? So it's why would you like say that you are playing just with these games? Of course, sometimes I understand it, because people, for example, get bored in the AAA scene, or vice versa, they get bored in the indie scene. It happens, but still, like for me, this mindset is like, I don't know. It's really disconnects you from games in general, right? Because there were so many, indie games which were really we could consider, sorry, as AAA games, because they are so high quality games, right? So I don't know.
It's yeah, I mean, we started the conversation. What platforms or games consoles growing up? It really wasn't about one particular genre or one particular platform.
True.
For us, me and my friends and I, like me and my friends, we just loved just playing absolutely everything we could get our hands on. And the more consoles you have between you, also
the
like
better,
somebody would get
yeah,
like
exactly.
a Super Nintendo for Christmas, and another mate might get a Mega Drive or the Genesis over in North America for their birthday. You wanted to kind of like just branch out,
Exactly.
like for the love of God, can somebody get an N64 now? Because we're like we all want to go around to that person's house and play games and hang out.
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't really buy into the whole kind of faction kind of mentality. For me, it was to just to enjoy as much as possible, and there's so much greatness out there.
True. Very true. I wish everyone that's had this mentality, by the way. We could like have all the conversations with everyone, but yeah, sadly it's like a lot of people are so picky. And on, like I said, on one hand I can understand them, because like financial situation might not like let them play all the games and consume all the games. But yeah. Are you down to answer some questions from the chat, by the way? Because we
absolutely
had a lot of topics here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let us know, ladies and gentlemen, if there is any question. Let me figure out my chat so I will see the questions. Let us know. Hölgyek, urak, bármilyen kérdés? Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any questions? Now is the time to ask questions. Let me know. Any questions? Going back to the transition from AAA to indie, as you mentioned, when you started forming your own company and making your own game, was it, by the way, a scary decision? Because I haven't asked this question from you. Was it a scary or hard decision for you at all, or no? Or not at all?
I think that there's an interesting concept that fear and excitement are pretty much the same thing. It's just depending on really kind of how you're framing it.
I see.
So for us, really, there was definitely something that was quite intense there, because we're really on our own. We're not just developers anymore. We're a business. We're a company, and that's a very different thing. It's one thing about being able to tell stories within a world. And there's another thing about the whole business side of things. I mean, just doing payroll, accountancy, processing taxes, all this stuff. It seemed all a bit like, oof, to really have all of that in your mindset as now part of the job. So that did feel like a bit intense, but at the same time, the fact that we knew that we got a future in our hands, and it's up to us to really do the best that we can with the time that we have, was extremely liberating.
I see.
It was when we first started, it was just so nice knowing that we're all hanging out and we're working on stuff, and we're like, well, why not just go to the park? I'll tell you what, lads, it's a beautiful day out there, pick up a laptop or a notepad, wherever you're working on. Let's just go and sit outside a while and, just hang while we work. And being able to do it our way. Unfortunately, when you're indie, that's only a very fleeting moment. So unless you have a tremendous bankroll, I mean, like, it suddenly then goes into back to the monumentous workload that it takes to be indie. So you have all the freedom in the world, but you just don't have the time to use it because you're constantly working. But it's something very, indeed, very liberating and very freeing. And for that part, that's why I didn't feel so scared or worried.
I see.
It was more about the unknown potential than it was about the fear of failure. It was more the idea of let's do our best and let's just do something that we can be proud of, a game that we want to make, and we achieved it. So that part of it, I'm very content.
I see. Thank you. Okay, ACG is asking, we don't see much promo in the UK. Anything to look out for? I think the game is a piece of genius. Thank you for that. Okay, so that's the question.
Okay, so for this game, we got the Sony version coming up soon, which is coming out on the 29th of November. So that's going to be something quite exciting. We're about to start communicating that out and do a big push with Dev Diary Talks, where you can, meet some of the team and go back and interview some of the friends and just say, hey, what's a spotlight feature you'd like to look at? So we're going to have a lot more promo material coming up where you get to understand the team better and you get to understand, why the game exists and what we did. So we're going to be getting a bit more hands-on with communities these days because we're wrapping up the ports and our dev side of things are winding down. So we have some time to talk about all of this. So Sony launch coming up soon.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the question and answer as well. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, any more question? Any more question? Let us know. While we are waiting for questions from the chat, we talked about like dream games, right? So everyone has his dream game. Was Venture to the Wild your dream game, or you still have like ideas for a way bigger game that you always wanted to make? I was interested about this.
For me, it's there's many dream games that I would love to create.
Like a list, right?
Yes, it's one of those very difficult things is to try and keep people focused because we'll be talking about a project that we were working on just for fun on the side, and then when people are exhausted about the current project and it's like, oh, this is a lot of work, people start thinking that, oh, wouldn't it be cool to make that one? And it's like, okay, look, like one game at a time. I can't keep two in my headspace. I've got to focus completely on this one first. So that's definitely something. I mean, this project is definitely a dream game of mine. No doubts about it. I adore absolutely every single part of it. It turned out to be something far more of an achievement than I thought we could possibly do. And my standards were pretty high. So I'm very, very blown away by the quality that we hit at the end. But that being said, there's many ideas and many games that I would love to make. But, one game at a time, no?
True. Have you, by the way, always had this mindset of yours that you always wanted to have the best quality in everything? Like you mentioned, the musical part or the music part was also very important for you to be the best quality as it can. Like, have you always had this mindset of yours in your life throughout your career as a game developer, or it's something that like you learned on the way?
I think that it's really important to always think of a game like holistically.
Okay.
I think if you have an experience and you're playing a game and like certain aspects are amazing, that's brilliant. But the problem is that when things are coming in, quite raw, it shows. I think you have to kind of try to maintain a consistent level of quality on everything. Otherwise, it kind of ruins the illusion and experience a bit.
True.
And in AAA, it was something that was a very important skill to learn because, again, you're much more segmented, you're compartmentalized. So for myself, doing like design and like tech stuff, you would often kind of come into loggerheads and get into conflict with well, 99% of the time, usually the art team, because, you know, you do gray boxes, you get the narrative in there, you got to act pretty much how you like it, and then art would change it or things would change, and then you have to go backwards and forwards. But I find that when conversations were a conflict, where it was like one department trying to champion their corner, their bit, as much as possible versus the other departments, that's a shortcut to a troubled project. The game can still be good, but it's going to be a nightmare to make, and the game collectively will suffer. I think it's better when, you know, the departments talk and you try to really find the middle ground. You know, designers can be very much like, okay, we need this for this flow, this functionality, but then, you know, might not be the best for the composition. For example, if you walk into a new area and you want to have some beauty shots or something, you know, you need to take into considerations of the needs of the other departments so they can shine as well. I think that if you try to champion one aspect of the game at the sacrifice for the other aspects, we're not really truly taking advantage of the fact that video games is a fusion of pretty much like most main media. You know, I mean, like, I love music, so why not have the soundtrack to be like an album that you want to listen to? You know, I love art, so comic books and you know, any kind of illustration work. So why not, you know, really, you know, put a lot of love into that? You know, I mean, we the stories and books and writing, they're the same thing as well. So I think it's very important to take a step back to always make sure that you try to make sure every department gets the love and support it needs, and not try to steamroll it. I mean, again, like an indie is different. You know, there are people that have a hook and it's just one thing, and it is very simply about that one thing. And you don't need to really utilize the full spectrum of the media of video games because it's just not necessary. You know, like they're doing something,
especially
very,
if someone is a solo
but
developer, right? It's way harder if they are not committed to any parts or any segments of the process of making that game, right? Because they might not be that talented in like in other fields they are, right? So
no, absolutely. I mean, one of my, I think the best advice I can give is try to avoid being a solo dev. When I first started out doing the Vincent prototype right back in the day, I was so hard-headed about that. As I'm going to code it, I'm going to write the music, I'm going to do everything. I want this to be like my project. I want complete control. And again, funny story, going back to the audio again, it was the first person that kind of really trod on my toes about that was that Dave came into the room one day and he saw what I was working on. And, you know, he's listening to like the placeholder stuff and some of the scratch stuff I was doing. And it was like interesting. And he really loved what, you know, I was just playing around with. He was like really into it. Back like a week later and he goes, Paul, listen to me now. Just give me 5 minutes. Can you but turn off your speakers? And then what he will do of something that he was working on, and just felt 10 times better. It was like that's a game changer, isn't it? And was I trying to make this project for the players?
Yeah. Exactly.
So you kind of realize that, you know, if you really want to do something great, then and again, you know, even though that there are solo, they really are like, you know, like a one-person army back to these people. But you've also got to remember, me testing the game and focus testing the game. Who are the people that hands-on? You know, whether it's people at the public or all these different kinds of things. To the game in many different forms. I don't person that was, you know, raised and born and lived in a white room with nothing but a computer and no access to that did it all completely themselves.
It's rare.
I think there's always going to be on some level.
True.
And
True.
I think that so tremendously powerful,
especially on
the
music level, in my opinion. Yeah, but because that's here the most times if a solo developer like a music composer. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if it's a solo developer that collaborates with a music solo development, then really it's like something to the game, and it's that person's work. I find it always a bit confusing. But again, I don't want to take anything away from anyone that in isolation, and it really was their thing, you know. For people that can to do, it's crazy difficult.
True, very true. Any more questions? Any more question? Any more question? Let us know. Any more question? We touched, by the way, here a lot of topics. Is there any that you would like to talk about as a topic, even if it's like about venture to the wild, journey, or the future, or anything?
I think we've been having some pretty good banter for about the best bit of news. I think we've covered like a lot of the things that anything I'd like to say in closing thoughts, like if I had to give like to people that, you know, really are passionate and want, I would say I don't want to put anyone off. Extremely difficult. You hear this all the not until when you're actually there, even if you have got AAA experience and, you know, you've seen a lot, is a lot. That being rewarding and most fulfilling thing, you know, your project, you know, for to bring it out there. And out as well, I'd say, you know, it's going to be difficult. And also to go back, team is the most important tool. The people that you collaborate with, the people that help, they're critical, aren't they? And it's their game too. So I strongly recommend, if you're starting out, you know, find people you enjoy working with, people that can do things that you can't, and yeah, just have as much fun as you can, despite you know, deadlines and a lot of pressure. You know, it's a risky indie. You know, make sure that you have a good gig along the way, and you know, be kind to each other, and yeah, do your best. Look after your team. The team is the most important thing.
Thank you. When we can see or read your book, by the way? Just a closing question from me, because I'm interested in that. You mentioned it a couple of times, so I can tell that you would like to write one.
Oh no! It's I don't think straight back into video games for me. But in the meantime, if you're ever bored, if you can find a copy of it, or if you want it on Steam, you can get a digital copy of the comic book, which was tremendous fun to put together. That was it gave us a lot of time to go back and to flesh out characters that we didn't have enough time to really do in the games. So it works beautifully as a compendium to tell more stories. So in the meantime, I'll just leave it to the comic book.
I see. Thank you again, by the way, for your time and for your honesty.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And thank you for those who asked questions in the chat. I really appreciate the questions as well from the chat. So yeah, like I said, I will need some more of your minutes of stream, but for those who were here with us live and also who will watch us back as a VOD version or YouTube edited version later on YouTube this year, thank you so much for joining us today at this episode with Paul. I really appreciate everyone's time and especially your time, Paul. Thank you so much. It was really an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice day or night, depending where you live, everyone. Bye bye.